On a Saturday morning in early summer, sunlight bathed the white walls of a colonial mansion in Chestnut Hill, an upscale suburb of Boston. Elizabeth Collins stood by her bedroom window, gazing at the roses blooming in the garden. Her mother had spent a year nurturing these pure white roses for the wedding bouquet next week. "Are you ready?" Amanda's voice echoed from downstairs. Just 1 week until the wedding. It was time for the final makeup rehearsal. "Yes, I'll be right down." As Elizabeth checked her reflection in the mirror, she reflected on her journey. She had worked her way up to sales director at Prestige Realty, earning $85,000 a year. Coming from a modest family, her father a high school teacher and her mother a homemaker, everything she had achieved was through her own efforts. She met Robert 3 years ago at a real estate seminar in Boston. As a vice president in Goldman Sachs' investment banking division, he claimed to have been captivated by her intelligence and beauty right there and then. After a year of dating, he proposed at a restaurant along the Charles River. It seemed like a perfect story. Downstairs in the living room, her sister Amanda sat restlessly on the sofa. She worked as a nurse at the local hospital. Always dependent on her sister since childhood, she still often sought Elizabeth's protection. She was going to be the maid of honor at the wedding. "I'm not feeling very well today." "Have you skipped breakfast again? You haven't been looking well lately." "No, that's not it." Though Elizabeth sensed something odd about Amanda's evasive manner, she smiled kindly. The bond between sisters had always been her pride. "Don't worry. After the makeup rehearsal, let's have brunch at the cafe." The doorbell rang, and Robert Wilson appeared. Earning over $150,000 a year, he was known in social circles for his charming smile. "Good morning, my love." Robert approached Elizabeth with a broad smile and kissed her cheek. "Hey, you'll ruin my makeup," Elizabeth joked, and Robert responded with a light laugh. There was a hint of unease in his manner, but no one noticed. "Mind if I join the makeup rehearsal today? I have some things to discuss with the venue too." "Of course." In the backyard, Margaret was busy gardening. James, her father, sat in his study reading the newspaper, occasionally glancing at the garden and giving his wife warm looks. Their parents' mutual love and respect after 35 years of marriage was Elizabeth's ideal. The wedding preparations were progressing smoothly. A ceremony at a historic church in the Boston suburbs, followed by a lavish reception at the Four Seasons Hotel. 150 guests. Everything seemed perfect, from the lobster salad appetizer to the prime rib roast beef and the 5-tier wedding cake. She had her mother's pearl necklace, a new wedding dress, and her grandmother's tiara. The traditional "a-something for" was complete. It was supposed to be the perfect wedding. On the wedding day, morning light filtered through the stained glass windows of the Trinity Church in Copley Square, creating a rainbow of colors in the bridal suite. Built in 1877, this historic church would witness another couple's eternal vows today. Elizabeth sat quietly as the makeup artist applied finishing touches, studying her reflection in the mirror. "You're such a beautiful bride." The makeup artist's words made Elizabeth's mother nod proudly. The white wedding dress was a work of art, from the lace bodice to the hem. Adorned with Swarovski crystals, the high-quality silk dress enhanced Elizabeth's elegant bearing. Her mother's pearl necklace, her grandmother's tiara, everything was perfect. Something blue? Margaret asked. Yes, the garter, Elizabeth smiled. The traditional something for was now complete. Amanda arrived late to the bridal suite. I'm sorry, I'm feeling a bit. Are you all right? We don't have much time before the ceremony. Elizabeth looked worriedly at her sister. Paler than usual in her light pink bridesmaid dress, Amanda seemed unsettled. She hadn't been well for several weeks. Everyone thought it was fatigue from the wedding preparations, but no one knew the truth. Amanda, you. Just as Margaret began to speak, the pipe organ solemnly began to play. Mendelssohn's Wedding March announced the start of the ceremony. The historic church was filled with 150 guests, colleagues from Goldman Sachs, Prestige Realty's clients, college friends, and relatives from both families. With each step toward the altar adorned with roses and baby's breath, Elizabeth could feel her father James's arm trembling slightly. Sunlight streaming through the stained glass painted the aisle in rainbow colors. Elizabeth walked proudly, feeling the warm gazes of the guests. Her parents had walked this same aisle 35 years ago. Be happy. At the end of the aisle, her father tearfully placed Elizabeth's hand in Robert's. At that moment, she felt her father's grip tighten more than usual, as if he sensed something. Robert, in his elegant navy tuxedo, had seemed like the perfect groom until this moment. However, as the minister spoke, he occasionally glanced at Amanda standing behind them. His eyes held a mix of guilt and anxiety. As a loving partner. When exchanging vows, Robert's voice trembled slightly. Elizabeth tried to convince herself it was just nerves. But deep down, something felt wrong. The platinum wedding rings were exchanged, and the ceremony concluded solemnly. Amid the guests' applause of blessing, the bride and groom left the church. I need to rest before the photos. In the limousine heading to the Four Seasons Hotel, Amanda suddenly turned pale. Are you okay? Elizabeth asked worriedly, and her sister could only manage a weak nod. Beside them, no one missed Robert's momentary tension. The reception venue was on the top floor, overlooking the Charles River and Boston Public Garden. Crystal chandeliers sparkled above pure white tablecloths and rose decorations, creating an elegant atmosphere. The main table was set for the bride and groom, bridesmaids, and both sets of parents. At the entrance, guests were taking photos in front of the welcome board. Everyone smiling for the camera, unaware of the tragedy about to unfold. Then came the fateful moment. As Elizabeth moved toward the newlyweds' seats, Robert suddenly grabbed her arm firmly. Don't sit there. What do you mean? In the hushed room, Robert's voice rang cold. That seat belongs to Amanda from today. She's carrying my child. I'm sorry. Amanda stood up crying. Gasps of surprise echoed through the room as the truth behind her recent illness was finally revealed. The room froze. Parents shocked. And Elizabeth, wearing a knowing smile. She gracefully picked up a champagne glass and walked toward the guest tables. Her posture was more dignified than ever. Everyone in the room was puzzled by her unusual composure. Various emotions swirled through the room. Relatives whispered among themselves, Goldman Sachs colleagues looked confused, and Prestige Realty clients stood dumbfounded. All 150 guests held their breath, each processing this unexpected turn of events. This is outrageous. James's angry cry echoed under the chandeliers. The usually mild-mannered high school teacher now shook with uncontrollable rage. Margaret collapsed into a chair. Her pale blue dress emphasized her ashen face. Stay calm. Elizabeth placed a hand on her father's shoulder with an almost detached calmness. The hand holding her champagne glass was remarkably steady. How can you smile?" Margaret asked through tears. "Because this is entertainment." Elizabeth's voice carried an unnatural brightness, perhaps masking deep anger. In a corner of the room, Robert Wilson's parents kept their eyes down. They seemed lost for words at their elite Goldman Sachs son's scandalous behavior. "Rob, is this true?" Patricia, Robert's mother, looked at her son in disbelief. But Robert avoided her gaze, only looking at Amanda. "The baby is definitely Robert's." As Amanda repeated softly, her hand naturally moved to her stomach, causing another stir in the room. Suddenly, the reception hall doors burst open. "Wait. Let me speak too." A woman's shrill cry pierced the air as she rushed into the venue. Breaking past reception and security, her appearance made the entire room hold its breath. The woman wore an elegant Hermès dress. She was Janet Wilson, Robert's new secretary at his company. Crying, she walked to the center of the room. "Robert, you deceived me." Janet's voice trembled under the chandeliers. "Janet. Why are you here?" Panic crept into Robert's voice. "I'm pregnant too. With Robert's child." The room froze again. The previous murmurs turned to complete silence. This time Amanda stood up, letting out a cry. "What? You said I was special." Janet gave a sardonic smile. "You were deceived too. Our relationship has been going on for 3 years." Janet pulled a photo from her luxury brand bag. "Here's the proof. My ultrasound from last week." Robert Wilson, the brilliant Goldman Sachs banker. Around this man who boasted an annual income of over $150,000, 3 women's lives intersected: his pregnant sister-in-law Amanda, his equally pregnant new secretary Janet, and Elizabeth, the bride betrayed at her wedding. The room was in chaos. Amanda collapsed in tears. Robert stood stunned. And Elizabeth quietly observed the scene while sipping champagne. Just like a Shakespearean tragedy. Elizabeth's whisper was heard only by her college best friend sitting next to her. Her voice carried a hint of assured victory. From the top-floor reception venue windows, Boston's cityscape stretched out before them. In contrast to the Charles River's peaceful flow, the room churned with emotions of anger, sadness, and betrayal. Robert silently watched Amanda and Janet argue. His former gentlemanly demeanor had vanished completely. Now he was just a man facing the consequences of his actions. "Ladies and gentlemen, in light of these circumstances." As the MC began speaking hesitantly, Elizabeth quietly stood up. All eyes in the room turned to her. Gone was her forced smile. Instead, her face showed cold determination, a kind of resolve. Elizabeth rose slowly. The atmosphere in the room instantly changed. The previous chaos fell silent as if under a spell. All 150 guests held their breath, waiting for her next words. Thank you for the wonderful show. Elizabeth's voice was surprisingly clear and strong. But it's not over yet. The real opening act begins now. She gracefully set her champagne glass on the table and walked to the center of the room. Her wedding dress train glided across the floor like an actress on stage. The expensive silk dress sparkled under the chandelier lights. Amanda looked anxiously at Elizabeth. Amanda, did you really think I knew nothing? A cold smile played on Elizabeth's lips. Her expression was completely different from the kind sister they knew. Do you remember that day? The color drained from Robert Wilson's face. The expression of the Goldman Sachs banking prodigy froze like a wax figure. Last Thursday. You came home unusually early. Elizabeth began speaking as calmly as if reminiscing. You said your company meeting ended early. But you left your phone behind. A small murmur spread through the room. All 150 pairs of eyes turned to Robert. The low battery notification sounded, so I went to charge it for you. At that moment, the sender of the message displayed on the screen was my beloved sister. Elizabeth pulled a paper from her luxury clutch bag. It was a photograph of a phone screen. Her fingertips holding the evidence trembled slightly. Let's tell her about the baby at the wedding. Then big sister will have to give up. Amanda nearly slid off her chair. Her pale pink bridesmaid dress emphasized her ashen complexion. I knew everything. But I deliberately kept quiet. Want to know why? Elizabeth's gaze turned to Robert Wilson. Her eyes held the determination for revenge about to begin. My beloved fiancé. An elite banker earning over $150,000. A man who, behind his charming smile, impregnated my sister and had an affair with his secretary. What an impressive double life. Elizabeth, let's talk about this. Robert spoke for the first time, his voice trembling. Thin sweat beaded on his forehead. Talk? How interesting. Elizabeth gracefully reached into her clutch bag again. Then let's talk about this. She pulled out a bundle of papers. They were invoices with the Four Seasons Hotel letterhead. The fresh papers gleamed under the chandelier light. The wedding costs total $75,000. Do you know whose credit card paid for all this? I changed the payment arrangements just 3 days ago. The venue, catering, flowers, dress, everything has been switched to your card. Elizabeth continued her explanation like a business presentation. Her tone was exactly that of the Prestige Realty sales director. My plan was very simple. Expose the betrayers in public. Inflict economic damage. And destroy their social credibility. But why wait until the wedding? Janet asked in a trembling voice. Her luxury brand dress couldn't hide her agitation. Elizabeth's voice carried emotion for the first time. It was a voice mixed with deep hatred and sadness. I wanted you all to meet your fitting end in front of 150 witnesses. I endured for a week for this moment. Amanda's hand instinctively moved to her stomach. The gesture ironically illustrated her guilt. Since reading your message, I've been preparing for this day. The price for betraying your sister won't be small. Elizabeth slowly looked around the room. Goldman Sachs executives, Prestige Realty clients. Boston high society leaders, and the family and friends who had supported her. In a corner of the room, the reception video camera silently recorded this historic moment. Ladies and gentlemen, thank you for watching this wonderful show. Her voice resonated throughout the room. It carried the confidence of a victor. I hope this becomes a wonderful memory. Small laughs began breaking out around the room. They grew louder, eventually turning to applause. Ironic laughter and applause celebrating Elizabeth's perfect revenge echoed under the chandeliers. Please continue to enjoy yourselves. I'll take my leave now. Elizabeth gracefully removed her wedding ring and placed it on the table. The platinum ring rolled across the table with a pure sound. Then, like a model on a runway, she straightened her back and turned to leave the room. Wait! Robert called out desperately. His appearance no longer held any trace of the sharp investment banker he once was. Without you, my future. Elizabeth turned back. Her expression showed no trace of hesitation anymore. Child support for 2 pregnant women plus $75,000. A scandal in front of Goldman Sachs executives. Yes, your future looks difficult. But that's the path you chose. Her father James approached his daughter with tears in his eyes. Are you all right? At those words, Elizabeth's expression softened for the first time. Yes. I have my career that I built myself. Sales director at Prestige Realty, earning $85,000. A position I earned through my own ability. I don't need to be anyone's mistress. Amanda spoke through her sobs. We're sisters. Yes, we are. Elizabeth's voice turned ice-cold again. That's exactly why your betrayal can never be forgiven. Move out of our parents' house and stand on your own feet. Leaving these final words, Elizabeth opened the luxury hotel's heavy doors. A taxi was already waiting beyond them. The last piece of her perfect plan. A long silence followed her departure. Then someone whispered softly. It was like watching a perfect revenge drama. Indeed, it was revenge. But it was also a battle for one woman's dignity. A story of a betrayed bride's quiet anger and victory. Those left in the room could only silently witness this dramatic conclusion, each with their own thoughts. 6 months later, in Boston's Back Bay district. From the windows of the newly opened Collins Real Estate office, the autumn leaves of Commonwealth Avenue created a beautiful view. Elizabeth smiled quietly as she reviewed a contract on her latest IMAX screen. That makes 15 closings this month. Her life had changed dramatically since the wedding. After leaving Prestige Realty, she established her own real estate company. Many former clients continued working with her, valuing her capabilities. Her annual revenue was now more than double her previous salary. Elizabeth. Here are the documents for the new property. Her secretary Kate brought the papers with a cheerful voice. Kate was a former colleague from Prestige Realty. She was one of those who didn't hesitate to resign and join Elizabeth's startup venture. Thank you. Oh, by the way, was that rumor true? Yes, it's confirmed. Robert Wilson has resigned from Goldman Sachs. Elizabeth gazed out the window. According to reports, Robert had lost Goldman Sachs' trust after the wedding incident and now spent his days struggling with child support and wedding payments. Between support payments for 2 women and the $75,000 debt, more than half his monthly salary disappeared into payments. And Amanda? She moved out of your parents' house and is living in low-income housing. She's already quit her hospital job. Elizabeth occasionally heard news about her sister. Forced out of their parents' home, Amanda had quit her nursing job and was now juggling several part-time jobs to make ends meet. Sometimes their mother would call, begging Elizabeth to forgive her sister. But Elizabeth's heart was set. A client has arrived. Kate's voice brought her back to reality. The visitor was an executive from a major developer, wanting to discuss the sales representation of a luxury condominium project. It was one of the accounts Robert used to handle. "Ms. Collins, your reputation is well deserved," the executive remarked admiringly after their meeting. "That wedding incident has become legendary in the business world." Indeed, the events of that day had become a talked-about story in Boston's high society, the tale of a betrayed bride's masterful revenge. But for her, it was just a chapter in her past. In the evening, Elizabeth was dining with her new boyfriend at their usual restaurant. He was an associate professor at Columbia University, an intellectual and sincere man. "I'm always impressed by your strength." He smiled gently. His smile showed none of the calculation that Robert's had. "It's not strength," Elizabeth replied while tilting her wine glass. "I just wanted to choose my own path in life." Outside the window, the sun was setting over the Charles River. The river flowed as peacefully as it had that day a year ago. But now, there was no hesitation in Elizabeth's heart. "The best revenge was finding my own happiness." Her words dissolved quietly into the night sky. This was the true victory. The betrayed bride had carved out a new life through her own power. It was more than a story of revenge, it was the brilliant tale of one woman's rebirth.